What's going on, beautiful people? David Schiele here with you. Welcome back to Game Day Grace, the podcast where faith and sports combine in powerful conversations. And we do have a powerful woman of God joining us on the Believers Bench today. We have Becky Bonaventura. We're going to get into exactly what she does, also the book that she's writing in just a bit. But really quick, if you enjoy these conversations, remember to hit the subscribe button. Our main platform is right here on YouTube, but we are also on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. Hit the follow button so that way you are tuned in and you get a notification every Wednesday when these episodes drop. And remember to share with a family member or friend because one share can change a life. So we have Becky here with us, and Becky is so awesome because she is part of the strength and conditioning program at Rutgers. Before that, though, you were a collegiate athlete, correct?
That is correct.
Okay, so you played soccer. You were on the soccer pitch, and then I believe you even played high school basketball, too?
I did. I played soccer and basketball growing up my whole life and then decided to pursue soccer in college. So
yeah,
had a great experience with that.
And so tell me how you kind of got to the decision where, you know what, I'm going to go with soccer. And then now where you are with strength and conditioning, because, you know, that's a lot of different transitions from playing the game to coaching, as, you know, we'll get into a little bit later.
Yeah, absolutely. So with soccer, I just had great opportunities with a very competitive club scene in Virginia. I lived just outside of Washington, D.C., so was able to find a really good team and really be a part of a great community. And so it just naturally happened that soccer, I just had more opportunities to play and compete at a high level. I loved basketball. I didn't have quite the height for basketball. I played point guard when I did play, and I was always hustling on defense, but I just knew that my skill set naturally lended itself a little bit better on the soccer pitch. And then from a strength and conditioning standpoint, now I actually work with all sports or events that I never did as an athlete. So that has been a really fun challenge. So I currently work at Rutgers University in the strength and conditioning department with the jumpers, the vaulters, the divers, swimmers, and women's tennis. So one thing that I really enjoy about my current role is really having to utilize all my brain power constantly. Every day, every lift is different. Currently, all of my sports are in season, but I just really enjoy the challenge of connecting with all of the student athletes, really becoming a student of the field, a student of all of the sports that I work with and all the different events. There are so many people that I have contact with the event coaches, with the different student athletes, constantly learning from them, asking questions, and really just taking advantage of the fact that I have so many staff members and coaches that I can learn from here at Rutgers.
What was that learning curve trying to understand these other sports so that way you can put together a program to where these athletes are getting in the best shape possible to perform at the highest level?
Yeah, it really comes down to just looking at a needs analysis. So looking at each sport, what energy systems are involved, how long are their competitions, what is practice like for this specific coach that they're playing under or training under, and asking a lot of questions and being humble and recognizing that as a strength and conditioning coach, I am support staff to all of these different coaches and all of these different student athletes. And so the more that I can learn from them and not pretend like I know it all from the get-go, the better I can serve them and the better off my student athletes will be long-term.
Take us through your faith journey, because I know it's easy to just be like, oh yeah, just been a Christian my whole life, right? But I think especially as someone who is married and has children, there have been some trials and some tribulations where you might have been like, okay, I really have a choice here to either lean on my own understanding or I can lean on the word. How did you come to the place where you are just like, you know what, I am so committed to living for the Lord that no matter what happens, whether it's at home or at work, coaching, whatever it is, that you're just going to be standing firm?
So I grew up going to church. It wasn't until I was in high school that I really felt like I made my faith my own. I was at a youth group event And I remember just the message was dying to self and living for God. And so making those tough decisions to not do what, is fun or good in the world's eyes, but really pursuing a life of faith and knowing that that is long term what I wanted. But there were definitely bumps along the road, some challenging moments in college and different relationships that didn't work out and that had a faith component. I ended up making a really tough choice in college and breaking up with a long-term boyfriend because he decided that faith was no longer important to him and he didn't believe it anymore. And so that was really challenging for me, but I made the decision that I needed my life partner, whoever that was going to be someone that was committed to a life of faith and pursuing that. And so when I met my now husband, that was one of the things that we had talked about. And there was a moment where he asked me to be his girlfriend, and I initially actually said no, because he was had grown up Catholic and had gone to church here and there, but it wasn't really a main part of his life. And so we had the conversation and we had a good time talking and spending time together. But I told him, I've done this before. I've been in a relationship. I've been in a serious relationship that ultimately didn't work out because I knew that this was a choice that I had made to really pursue and be a part of the church and make it a priority and seek to live my life in alignment with that. And I don't want us to pretend like this is going to end well down the road. So that was a tough conversation. And then I was a summer camp counselor that summer at a Christian camp in Pennsylvania, summer's best 2 weeks. And one of the things at the camp is we weren't allowed to have our phones. As counselors, we were just, bought in and pouring into these kids and doing all sorts of sports things and adventures and camping and rock climbing. And it was great. But that summer, my now husband looked to other people in his life, his college wrestling coach, his teammates, other people, and read the Bible. I don't know if it was cover to cover, but he really started going to church and doing all of these things. And I wasn't there and I couldn't communicate. He could send me postcards and letters. But that was really it. And so it was clear that he was making it a priority on his own. It wasn't like he went to church one time for me, but it really seemed like something he was interested in. And so now it's been 8 years plus since then. It's been really awesome to see what God has done through making the tough decisions and following him in who I chose as a life partner and who's now the father of my 2 kids and who's going to be by my side. So that's the story and some challenges along the way.
Well, moral of the story there to me is Becky don't play about being equally yoked, y'all. That's what I just heard. It's like, no, we gonna be equally yoked, period. That's just what it is. I think that's such a hard thing to do. Like, you're in college, you're in a long-term relationship, then this person says, you know what, I'm not really sold out the way I was before. That's a really hard decision. So I definitely have to tip my cap to that, because I think some people let the emotions kind of mix in and get in the way and say, man, well, maybe we can make this work. Maybe I can get them back. Maybe I can get them back in the church. And so you were able to just split off of that. But then it's just funny. You told your now husband no at first, because it's like, nah, we're not equally yoked yet. Go handle that and go take care of that. I think my question is, what was it about him at first that led to you guys kind of getting to a point where he wanted to be your boyfriend, and then you said no? Because it does sound like there was some connection there before he really dove into the word. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So part of this goes to my personality of just being bold and maybe a little crazy. So on New Year's Eve, not anymore, but I used to make a bucket list. And so this was a couple years ago. I was younger in college. And so one of the items on my bucket list was to ask a random guy out. So my now husband is that random guy. that I asked out in the hallway of our athletic building. He had friended me on Facebook, which we've talked about since 2 months prior, and just randomly started liking all of my pictures or posts. So while I asked him out in a hallway, he definitely let me know that through that it probably wasn't going to get turned down. So I wasn't going too much out on a limb there. I just knew that he was a decent guy and that he was single because I had friends that were in his major and his master's program. And so he was a wrestler. And I was on the soccer team, and we had crossed paths here and there in the athletic facility, but I really didn't know who he was. And so it was really just that I had a job lined up after graduation. I already knew that I was going to be moving to Richmond, Virginia, and I knew that I was going to follow through on my bucket list item and ask somebody out because I was young and crazy. And I just didn't want to run into them at the grocery store afterwards if it turned out badly. And so I was like, I don't want to do that in Richmond once I move, because then I might have to see them again. And I just wanted it to be, a fun, go do something. So we went to a Pens Flyers game. I asked him out to a Pens Flyers game. And the idea was just to, go to a game, have a good time, cross off my bucket list item. But 8 years and 2 kids later, here we are.
I got to ask, why was that on your bucket list of all things?
I think it may have just been something that scared me a little bit, made me nervous, and made me a little uncomfortable. And I like to challenge myself. Typically in life, things that are just outside of my reach are things that I go for. Historically, I have not been a strong swimmer. So I've done 2 sprint triathlons and trains and tried to get better at the swimming portion. I naturally am not very great at snatching. And as a strength coach, I find that really frustrating. And so what do I do every day? Some form of snatching in my warm up or in my workout. So those things that I find challenging and that put me outside of my comfort zone are things that I enjoy chasing.
Okay. All right.
I'm writing a book,
Yeah. I got to give you credit. You do not live in the comfort zone. I mean, everything I'm hearing is like, hey, writing a book, asking a guy out. Being a strength and conditioning coach for sports that I did not play. All these things is just like where does this comfortability outside of the comfort zone come from?
I think is just trust in God that he's going to lead me down the right paths and close the right doors. Sometimes it hasn't been a fun closed door, but that he'll open other ones. When I first got into the field of college strength and conditioning, my first mentors in the field were in the basketball space. And so, of course, I wanted to be in basketball strength and conditioning, and that was my goal. But then I married a college wrestling coach. And so wrestling and basketball happened to be at the exact same time. So November to March are the busy seasons. And then we have 2 beautiful kids that we adore. And so if both of their parents are on the road traveling with sports from November to March, how's that going to work out for the kids? And how are they going to feel long term? Thankfully, I was able to recognize and realize that whereas my husband couldn't change sports as a sport coach, he's going to coach wrestling. As a strength and conditioning coach, I can connect with different people. I can coach different sports, and I really enjoy the challenge of that. And so I have been very fortunate to work under a fantastic mentor, David Van Dyke, here at Rutgers, and surrounded by so many other great parents in the department that I've leaned on at different points to help me understand and some of the things that I've incorporated into the Lean In book of how to make coaching fulfilling and sustainable as a parent. And some of those early on mentors in basketball strength and conditioning, not to scare me, but they shared statistics like 70% of coaches that are married, those marriages end in divorce. And that terrified me. At that point, I wasn't even married. I didn't have kids, but I knew that I wanted to have a fulfilling personal life. I grew up in a big family, love big family gatherings. And so I definitely knew that I wanted to set myself up in any way possible to be able to be an elite level strength and conditioning coach and work at the highest level and help my athletes compete at the highest level they possibly could, while also feeling like I was able to be a supportive wife and be a loving parent that was able to be around my kids. And I know all the different avenues and setups in college athletics can be challenging, and I applaud every single parent out there that is trying to figure it out. There's no perfect way, and we're all just, utilizing our village and figuring it out. But I'm really fortunate that we've been able to find a way to make it work for us in this current season.
Yeah, I mean, the word that keeps coming to my mind is balance. There's so many things to balance. I mean, even if you weren't writing a book, you still have a lot to balance. And then I noticed something when reading your book, and I want to talk about that for a moment. You are is the book out yet?
It is not out
Okay.
yet. I've been working on it. Working in strength and conditioning is a very full-time job, especially trying to do it at the highest level. And I don't want to rush the process because I feel like I would miss out on some of the wisdom that will ultimately be a part of the end product.
And the book is called Lean In, and I was able to get a small preview of that. And the reason I brought that up is because you mentioned a couple of things in that book I thought were really powerful. Firstly, it was something about taking time to pray for your athletes. When did that become something that you regularly practice? And is that something that you share with your athletes? Is that something previous coaches did for you?
I don't know that previous coaches did it for me. They may have, and I'm just not aware of it. I did go to a private Christian university for my 4-year degree, so we definitely prayed as a team at times. But I started praying for my student athletes probably 2 or 3 years ago, and I really utilized my morning commute to do that. I'm just praying for the event groups, and then also just individuals as they come to my mind. I do work with around 60 athletes, so it's not that I'm able to really name each one by name every day, but definitely think about each event group and just how I'm going to show up for them that day and try to wrap my head around, what their world is like, what type of competition they just came off of or what they're about to go into. And so the last 8-10 minutes of my commute, I really, just try to lean into that. And I have shared at times, particularly with one student athlete who was training in the off season. She was coming in voluntarily over the summer, and I had been praying for her. She was going through some different things, and I didn't know all the details, and I didn't need to, but I just told her a little. It kind of seemed out of the blue, possibly to her, but I just let her know, hey, I just felt really called to pray for you, and I just felt the words, "You are enough," come to me. And so I shared those with her, and she shared a little bit about what was going on and let me know that she felt really encouraged and blessed by those words. And those weren't my words. Those just happened to come to my mind. And I felt like it was something that God wanted me to share with her. And so that was something that organically happened. And, when it happens again, I'll try to listen to the call once again.
And I think something that is very powerful about prayer is when you pray for people, it can really change your heart towards them. There have been things that have come up with coworkers that other coworkers would tell me about, and they'd be like, I'm so frustrated with this person and that person and whatever else. And I remember the Lord saying, like, hey, ask her if she's prayed for the person that's upsetting her. And I did, which took a little courage to do that, because I was like, I don't even know what this person's prayer life looks like, but I did. And they were like, oh, actually, I haven't. Maybe I should try that. I don't know if there's a situation you can bring up specifically, but I do want to ask, when you have been praying for these student athletes, how have you felt your heart change towards them going through the strength and conditioning programs?
Yeah, absolutely. I feel like praying for them reminds me why I'm in the field of coaching in the first place. As strength and conditioning coaches, we can often be evaluated by, did we get the athlete stronger, more explosive? Are they faster? Are they hitting a certain vertical? And so it just reminds me to think of them as a whole person. And absolutely, I have prayed for coworkers that I wasn't necessarily seeing eye to eye with, and asking for God to change my heart, to help me see them again, not as someone that I am, coming up against, but really understanding why they may have said the things that they said, or why they're doing the things that they're doing, understanding that beyond or beneath everyone's surface level, what you see when they show up to work, there's so much more going on. And that goes for coworkers, that goes for student athletes as well. And so trying to utilize the tool, the blessing of prayer, to really show up in a way that represents who I want to be as a coach long term.
I just heard this at church not too long ago. We had a guest pastor come in, and he said the best thing about business or running a church or even coaching is the people, but also the hardest thing is the people.
Yep.
It's just like you love the people, but also the people are the hardest part, and you're trying to balance that. And sometimes, yes, there's a person that you're facing right in front of you, but you're really talking to the spirit that's behind that person when you're in those types of situations. And so that's why in your book, Lean In, it really hit me when I saw that, the aim is to be a transformational coach and not a transactional coach. Just for the audience, what does that mean? What's the differences between those two things? And then how does the faith wrap into being a transformational coach?
Yeah, so the difference between being a transformational coach and being a transactional coach, in my book, I tried to define it as simply as possible. And being a transformational coach involves prioritizing the person over everything else, whereas being a transactional coach is results, prioritizing results over everything else. Those were two terms that helped me really further define how I approached the book and what I researched, and really helped me as I went through the writing process.
One last thing, and we usually ask people this at the end. What's something you feel the Holy Spirit is working on within you as you go throughout this year?
Continuing to step forward in boldness, trusting that the path is going to continue to show up in front of me. This has been a really exciting year. This past year, I started a small business that was also something that I really felt that was a gift from God. I was driving on my way to work and trying to think of ways that I could add to our family's financials over the off season. I have a little bit more downtime in the summer. And so I was like, I'm not above, serving or doing anything, but I have 2 kids, so it needs to make sense. And so I was like, trying to figure it out. And then the next day I was turning on a podcast. I typically listen to a podcast on the way to work, and my line-in wasn't working. And I was very frustrated. I was like, okay. So I pressed the power button. I said, God, what do you have for me? Like, what are you trying to tell me in this moment? Like, why am I supposed to sit here in silence when I'm trying to do something educational? Then within the next 20 minutes, I had a business plan. And when I got to work, I opened a Word doc and I just wrote it all down. And it has been so fun, so exciting. Again, something that I have to make time for. That's one thing that I'm really personally trying to do is not everything can be important. How can you do all of these things? And I really feel like God has led me to each one. So I don't want to stop doing any of them, but just trusting God to step forward in boldness and have him show me what the next chapter looks like. I think the small business that I've started, it's called Action Plan, could be a great opportunity for strength coaches around the country to make some very legitimate side income on top of what they do in college athletics, in a way that doesn't get in the way of what they do for college athletics. And so for my family, as well as for others, I'm excited for that and to see what opportunities and open doors come from that. But it's also terrifying and scary. I've never done that. My dad wasn't, he owns his own business, and I never had plans to own a business. And here we are. I've now opened one up and have been running it since last April, and it's been really fun. But yes, the time management has just continued to become more and more essential.
Wow. Walking in boldness. I think that's a powerful word. It reminds me of Joshua, how bold he had to be to say, as for me and my house, we will serve the Lord,
Mm-hmm.
So definitely walk in that. As for Becky and her house, they gonna lean in. All right. That's the word right there. Becky, thank you so much for giving us some of your time today. We know you've got a lot on your plate as you've been sharing with us. And we know that those student athletes are in great hands because they have you in charge of their strength and conditioning, and that you're not only looking over them physically, but you're praying over them. So you're making sure they are spiritually getting their exercise as well. Becky, thank you so much. And thank you everybody else for listening today. If you enjoyed this conversation, one more time, I'm going to tell you to hit that subscribe button or that follow button, YouTube, Spotify, or Apple Podcast. Share this with a family or a friend. If you think they need to lean in, or maybe you yourself need to lean in like Becky is. I know I need to. I got a word from that today, y'all. All right. Until next Wednesday when we see you again, everybody be easy and be blessed.